Hi guys, it's September 16th, Thursday today, and 2021. I really have been wanting to get this quick little discussion going about the Aquarian Age and from a timing perspective. And it's been kind of driving me nuts because I keep getting downloads about things that I want to talk about. But this one is kind of a prerequisite for a whole bunch of other things I want to talk about. This channel is not really geared towards the deeply technical aspects of astrology. It is a very technical art, and the audience I want to address is more of the spiritual community or the New Age community, the Aquarian Age community. But there's some important information here that I think I want to put forward because it'll help people understand when things are happening, why things are happening, and so forth. I feel this tremendous amount of excitement about the energies coming in to our planet. And it's very intense and it's very exciting. So just a lot of people wonder, when does the Aquarian Age begin? And so technically, there's about a 26,000 year cycle where we are in an astrological age. So we're ending the period, the age of a Pisces, and because the ages move backwards through the zodiac, we're into the age of Aquarius now, and so each age is roughly 2,148 years long. Now, there's a lot of debate about this, right? Because it's very technical. It relies on astronomy, but it also relies on astrology. And you'll find, quite a few different perspectives. A lot of people think it began in the 1800s. And others say that, well, we're not going to be into the Aquarian Age for hundreds of years yet. So I'm going to offer a slightly different perspective that I think is a bit more pragmatic and basically, just very quick definition of how these ages are calculated. The Earth's axis, or which it rotates upon, it has a bit of a wobble built into it. Now, this wobble is so gradual that human beings would never actually feel or notice it, but it takes about 26,000 years for this wobble to go back to, say, the starting point, and where it will begin repeating. And then on the equinox in March, on March 20th or 21st of every year, when what's coming up on the horizon from the equator or the ecliptic is considered, the sign that's visible at that point in time is considered, that sort of defines what age we're in. And so that because of the Earth's wobble, the sign on the horizon at the equinox changes by a degree about every 72 years. And if you do the math, you'll find that results in the number of 2,148 years. So, we now are at, because of that in its precession, PRE, not procession. We are at the end of Pisces or into the beginning of Aquarius, depending on who you talk to and how they calculate this and so forth. I'm not going to get into, that's a rabbit hole. Like, you can spend a lot of time studying this, reading it, analyzing it, and so forth. And I don't think my audience is particularly wants to go down that rabbit hole, but if you want to, you can go and read up on it as much as you want. Google it. However, I'm going to offer a slightly different perspective, because to the New Age or spiritual community, this is a big deal. So first of all, what does Aquarius represent? Well, Aquarians are very individualistic. They tend to be intellectual. They do not discount science and evidence-based reasoning. They tend to be very egalitarian. Aquarius also represents the larger sort of community, and and to some extent service to that, to the whole, as opposed to it's individualistic, but it also, like I said, is very egalitarian. So the Aquarian energy is very much about very much about the collective. Now, and it also, there's because it can be quite intellectual. It's an air sign, right? So we're moving from a water sign of Pisces into an air sign. So there's the rationality and things like that are a big component of it. And along with that, because in modern astrology, Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. There are a lot of innovations and technology and things along those lines that fit into this sort of paradigm of Aquarius. So if we look now, if we look at things from a very practical perspective, and let's just take an empirical perspective, or just based on our observations of reality, right? I think empirically, there's absolutely no question that we are in the age of Aquarius. Now, a lot of people might differ, like I said, because they calculate things. However, I think if we look at human history and what's occurred in the past century or couple centuries, it's irrefutable. Absolutely, from my perspective, there's no way that you can say that that we are not being blasted with Aquarian energy. For example, it was not too many generations ago when people were getting around with horses and carriages. Most people never left their village or town or wherever they grew up. And, if you grew up in a rural area, you grew up and died there. They had very little contact with the outside world. There was no technology that allowed them to communicate with the outside world, except for print, which was slow. And there wasn't a lot of sources of knowledge or information. Information was higher education was only available to a handful of the population and so forth, right? So, and then along comes, the 20th century, and suddenly, we have, things like electricity become prevalent. We then get into radio, the nuclear age as well. I'm not pro-nuclear necessarily, but it's a fact that occurred. And we get then TV, and then we get mass media, and communications start to become much more rapid and instantaneous, and then up into, very interestingly, the 1980s is really when computer technology starts to take hold, and the early stages of the internet. We have desktop publishing, which revolutionizes the publishing industry. Now anybody, egalitarian, anybody can produce content and distribute it. And then when the internet gets along, and starts to take off, now we can not only produce content on our own, but we can distribute it around the globe. This is astonishing stuff, really, like truly world-changing. When historians look back at this period of time, they will say that this was one of the biggest times in human history, of modern human history, or the past thousands of years. Phenomenal change. We also have space travel. We recently had a satellite, what was the name of it? Voyager, was it, that left our solar system? I mean, this is big stuff. And now we have had missions to Mars and the moon and so forth. I mean, come on, this is Aquarian energy. And so, I think, like I said, if you just, and there's probably a lot of stuff I'm leaving it, well, medicine, education, the mass production of goods, the outsourcing of goods around the globe, and just-in-time manufacturing and shipping. If I sat here for a long time, I could probably list off like reams and reams and reams of things that describe this huge shift from the previous age into this one. And now there's a couple things that are coming up that are going to cement this or ground this into reality even more dramatically. And this is what I would like people to be aware of. Well, first of all, on I have to look up, make sure I get the right dates here. Yes, there's a every 20 years or so, Jupiter or Saturn form a conjunction, or whether they're in close proximity to each other in the same point in the sky, and this is called the Great Conjunction. And the way that the Great Conjunction works is that these conjunctions, or when the two planets, like I said, are close together, it will occur in a different element for roughly 200 years. So Jupiter and Saturn had been conjuncting in Earth signs since about 1802, and then in 1981 there was a conjunction in air for the first time since 1802, and then the next one conjuncted again back in Earth in Taurus in 2000, and then in December 21st, which happened to be the winter solstice, and it happened to occur also at the very first degree of Aquarius, was so on December 21st of 2020, there was a great conjunction at 0 degrees Aquarius on the solstice, the winter solstice, and so for the up until 2159, these conjunctions are going to be occurring in air signs. So there's a huge shift, because what happens is these great conjunctions mark kind of big shifts in consciousness, or the energies that are sort of at our disposal and that we're sort of bathed in. And so now we're moving from Earth to air, December commencing, for the up until 2159, in air signs. Air, and again, it's just so remarkable, like I said, that this one that occurred at the end of 2020 occurred at 0 degrees Aquarius. I mean, come on, that's pretty crazy. Now, just as a side note, myself personally, I really flourished in that period from 1981 until 2000, when during that period of roughly 20 years where the conjunction had occurred in air, because I'm a Sagittarius. I have a Sagittarius sun, and air is compatible with me. It feeds me, right? So I had a lot of really cool and fun and expansive experiences during that time. And then from 2000 until 2020, I kind of went back underground. Funny, eh? So, and here I am now. And then we had this conjunction, the Great Conjunction in air in just the end of the last year. And here I am again, putting myself out there. So, if you're an air or fire sign, you're probably going to find this energy more sort of conducive to your being. So that's one thing. Now, the other thing that is really important, that's good, like this to me, this is huge, like hugely important. And I'm going to include, there should be a graphic on your screen right now that will show you the dates. Now, I would really like to be able to do videos like this that are very detailed with really nice graphics and stuff like that, but it would take days of work. And right now I just can't do that. But again, like I said, it was very important for me to get this out there. So, I've verified some of these dates, but not all of them. These are in Greenwich Mean Time, European time. So the dates made it see, if you're in the Eastern time zone, it might be the day before in some cases, but this is pretty close, and it's accurate. It's just not necessarily for North American time zones. So the big thing that's going to happen next for the world, like this is really going to kick in the energies of the Aquarian Age, as far as I'm concerned, is when Pluto moves into Aquarius up until 2044, and that is going to start at we're going to have the first taste of that in the winter of 2023. So what is that, year and a half from now. So the way the planets go is that from Earth's perspective, there's periods of time, because of the way the Earth rotates around the sun, there's periods of time where the planets appear to go backwards in the sky. They're not literally, they never actually literally go backwards, of course, but from our perspective, it appears that way. So from our perspective, Pluto will move into Aquarius in March of 23, and then it'll retrograde or go backwards into Capricorn in June of 23. So that period between March and June, we'll get a taste of this energy of Pluto in Aquarius. And then it'll go back into, Pluto will go direct again into Aquarius in January of 24. And then it'll retrograde back into Capricorn in September of 24. And then it goes forward again. It'll be into Aquarius in November of 2024, all the way through now. It's going to stay now in Aquarius. It won't retrograde back into Capricorn again. It'll be there all the way until 2044, sorry. Pluto had been in Capricorn between 2008 and, roughly 2023. This is when, like I said, it'll move into Aquarius. So now Capricorn, ruled by Saturn, represents institutions, on a global, on a mundane level. When we use the word mundane in astrology, we mean, the world, as opposed to you or me, personally. Between 2008 2023, Pluto has been in this Capricornian energy, which has to do with the structures and institutions, on a mundane level that govern the world and society. And so, for example, we've seen things like Pluto is a very powerful and transformative energy. And we have seen, for example, these huge conglomerations form where, you have massive corporations that dominate the planet in various fields, like, say, Google or Apple or, Facebook, or I'm just focusing on technology now. But we've seen massive corporations, and we've also seen a huge concentration of wealth in the hands of a few billionaires compared to the rest of society, right? This is because Capricorn is very hierarchical and orderly, and it wants to build things that last and that are very solid. And it's very aspirational, sort of, it can be on a material level or a status level, right? So a lot of power being concentrated in the hands of the few is what we've seen. Now, when Pluto moves into Aquarius, this energy is, Aquarius has a completely different kind of energy. It's ruled by Uranus, and Uranus is all about individuality and freedom, and the people, as opposed to those in power. It's kind of much more revolutionary energy, and it's about the collective, us, as opposed to these institutions that were sort of more represented by Capricornian energy. And so freedom, unique self-expression, independence, but also rational and evidence-based. Like Aquarians typically don't do bullshit like fake news and stuff like that. They're factually oriented and evidence-based in their thinking, and they tend to be smart, but they tend not to put up with bullshit, especially when it comes to, the repression of people's rights and freedoms. And they tend to be quite revolutionary, like I said, so they will not put up with crap from people who are trying to dominate them or tell them what to do. So, they're very independent. Like, actually, the Aquarians can be so independent that they just ultimately go and do their own thing, because they're not necessarily inclined to buy into other people's paradigms. But they would be very typically environmentally conscious, science and evidence-based, and egalitarian, so human rights and social justice and things like this, very important to the Aquarian energy. And again, going back to Pluto, so when Pluto moves into Aquarius, starting in the winter of, we'll get the first taste of it in the winter of 2023, things are going to start changing really fast. Like Aquarians are very idealistic, and like I said, they don't put up with crap, like probably more so than any other sign, I would think, at least conceptually or intellectually. So I have known that this was coming for decades, and I've always sort of prayed and said I want to be on planet Earth still when Pluto goes into Aquarius. It's that big of a deal for me. I really want to witness this. Now, it always takes some time when there's big shifts like this for the energies to fully manifest. It could take a number of years or even a decade before a lot of that energy actually materializes into reality, but we're going to certainly start to become aware of it by then. So right now, if there's a feeling that we don't really have power or control over what's going on in the world, Capricorn, because we have these powerful institutions who sort of govern and impose structure upon our reality, it's going to start being dismantled in many ways as this Pluto moves into Aquarius. And because Plutonian energy is extremely deep and powerful and transformative, to me, this is when the Aquarian Age is. We also had the Great Conjunction, like I said, at 0 degrees Aquarius at the end of last year. So, but when Pluto moves in, this is when the pedal starts to get depressed and we start moving like really quickly. And I find it just the timing of everything very funny. And so again, if you're an Aquarian or an air or fire sign, you're going to find this energy is more conducive to you in a lot of ways. Now, of course, it really depends on your own individual natal chart, but just generally, and I'm speaking in very, very general terms. So really exciting stuff. In a year and a half, you'd be paying attention. Big things are going to start happening now. I think that's what I want to say. Let me just take a quick look. I did actually make some notes for the first time on this. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, like cell phones would be another thing. Like people are walking around now, connected to the whole planet instantaneously. Like even in countries that aren't as rich as the ones that I occupy, you can have a cell phone and be connected to people all over the world. This is just insane. Like, this is huge developments. I think that's it. Like, again, just to summarize, empirically, when I look at what's happened in the past century, and in particular, since the dawn of computers, the internet, and then cell phones, the iPhone and all that stuff, which was one of the first really user-friendly smartphones. Huge, globally, historically transformational stuff. So it very much seems to me that we are already in the age of Aquarius, if I just look at things empirically. I'm just going to add one more comment here, which is that you can hear me rushing and stumbling a bit, because I've already spent like whatever this is, like 20 minutes or more, so I recognize that people would probably have a shorter attention spans, but this is big stuff, and it takes time to convey. Now, if I was to present this properly, it would probably take like an hour and a half to really do this justice. But and it would be cool to do that, right? To just present this really well and with a lot of detail. But because I'm always worried that my videos are too long, and I'm just scratching the surface here with this one. But ugh. Okay, there you go. Bye.